That's not just the sound of that first sip of Morning Joe. It's the sound of someone shopping for a car on Carvana from the comfort of home.
That's a good blend.
It's time to take it easy, like answering some easy questions to get pre-qualified for a car in minutes.
Talk about starting the morning right.
Just like customizing your terms so your car fits your budget. Visit Carvana.com or download the app to experience car shopping the way it should be. Convenient, comfortable.
This Friday,
666 is the mark of the devil.
the first omen is deliciously disturbing.
You must be very careful, Margaret. Bad things will start to happen. Evil things.
An unchained cinematic beast.
This church will stop at nothing to maintain power.
No, don't.
And the most terrifying movie of the year.
It's not real. What's not real? Who said that?
The First Omen. Rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent. Only in theaters Friday. Get tickets now.
Okay, I think we're recording.
Back on the road again.
Feels weird not to be in Georgia.
Or in Michigan.
Last year, Susan and I hopped in a car and started our investigation for season 2 of Proof.
But this is day 1. Would you call this day 1 of season 2?
Day 1 in the field. And we are starting with the most important witness. Because everything starts and ends with Josh Burroughs.
Well, I hope we're able to find him.
Yeah, I mean, for some reason I feel like he'll talk if we can.
He certainly seems like he likes to talk. The question is, will he tell the truth?
Getting Josh Burroughs to talk does not seem to be the hard part in this case.
It was indeed not the hard part in this case. Just a few minutes after knocking on his door, we were setting up our microphones in a local Panera to talk to him.
Here with Josh Burroughs.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you know Jake and Ty, or who did you know?
I knew everybody. We were all a bunch of friends to begin with a long time ago. I go to a few parties a lot together.
We chatted for a minute about Manteca and skateboarding.
So you were a skater as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you any good?
Very, actually.
Do you still skate?
Every once in a while, I do. But, the whole Renee situation was all messed up. I still, to this day, think that Jake Silva is wrongly locked up.
Why do you say that?
Well, because there were some things that I was forced to say, although I was present at the party and was a witness to this. I can't say that I saw Jake Silva do anything.
That's when Josh Burroughs began to tell us what he said was the true story of what happened at the Home Depot. The story he's never revealed before, until now. So how'd this party come about? Like, how'd you hear about it?
I just started hearing from friends, about a party going on, and it totally slipped my mind. And if memory serves me correctly, me and a couple other friends were driving by and we saw it going on. And I ended up getting dropped off with another one of my friends. He got scared and said he wanted to go home because it was too late. And me, being rebellious, I didn't care, so I went.
So what happens when you get to the party?
The only thing I remember really is getting pistol whipped. The one thing I do remember was being thrown on the ground, and I was getting punched and kicked by a few others.
By who?
It was Jake, and then I think it was Ty. Also another guy, I forget his name, he had a red beard.
Is that Ray?
I think so.
Why were they beating you up?
Me and Renee, we had a little thing going on, so to speak. And Jake, I guess, found out about that I was fooling around with Renee.
Josh told us that while he was getting pistol whipped in the Home Depot, he glanced over and saw that Renee Ramos was being attacked too. So you're attacked, and then Renee gets attacked after, or?
Yeah. I was held there, and I was watching several people around Renee. One that I do know was Ty Lopes. Jake Silva, however, I can't honestly say that he was surrounding her.
Did you ever see anyone strangle her?
Yeah, with their own panties.
Her own panties?
It's one of the things that kind of stick in my head to this day. I kind of won't forget that.
Then what happened?
I was knocked unconscious.
Is it the next morning you wake up?
It was actually dawn. And then I woke up, I came to, I didn't see nobody. I seen blood where I last saw Renee. Everywhere. And I didn't know what the fuck happened. All I remember is getting pistol whipped and knocked out. I found out she was dead through the news. And that's when I put two and two together. Because last time I saw her, she was being surrounded and basically being raped and beaten. So I try to hide it from the detectives because I didn't want to be involved. Because sometimes people like me want to take justice in their own hands, so to speak.
I'm Susan Simpson.
And I'm Jacinda Davis.
I'm an attorney and investigator.
And I'm a true crime TV producer.
And this is Proof, Season 2, Murder at the Warehouse. Proof is a Red Marble Media production in association with Glassbox Media.
New episodes are released on Mondays, and on Thursdays you can catch our sidebar episodes where we talk about the case, talk to guests, and tell you more about what's going on behind the scenes. You can find additional materials about this case on our website at proofcrimepod.com.
This is episode 12, The Kid with the Earnest Lies. As we drove back from our interview with Josh, Jacinda and I tried to make sense of the story we'd just heard. Remember, Josh was literally the first witness in this case that we spoke to, and we were still just beginning to make our way through the case files. At this point, Josh's story was the only one we'd heard, and it was a lot to take in.
I'm so confused after talking to Josh.
And I'm not.
You're not?
No, it all makes perfect sense to me now.
In what sense?
That is who the police were dealing with. I think even at 14, he was probably able to sell it with the same sort of earnest expression. I mean, the story itself is not necessarily top grade, but the delivery was on point.
Yeah. But I'm more confused than ever. Was there an actual party?
No, there was never
You
a
don't
party.
think so?
No, there was never a sign.
I mean, he's kind of believable, right? Like, if
Not the content, not the
but
actual...
if you didn't know anything about this story, right? You just showed up and you said, tell me about this horrible thing that happened to you at 14. And he told you a story about being at this Home Depot and being held down and watching this girl get raped. Like, you would believe that.
I would not, because he can't give any details. He cannot give specifics. He cannot describe things in a way that comes from actual experience, because there's nothing behind it, behind the words. But yeah, no, I will say the way he says those words is believable. And I can absolutely see how two detectives who are really wanting to solve a case find this kid and his earnest lies, and they're like, well, there's got to be some kind of truth to it. We sat down with him and he starts talking about he was at this party, and in my head, like, Jacinda's gonna believe this shit.
I kind of did, right? Well, you know, I'm a sucker for that. Like, I don't expect people to lie to me, even though I know they do, and I know I should expect it. But I always feel like I should believe them until I can prove it otherwise.
The story Josh told us was similar to what he told detectives back in 2000, in that both versions included a party at the Home Depot. But the details of his story today are very different.
Well, I didn't think it made sense that they would just leave him laying there unconscious.
That part of the story has never been told before. That was a whole new addition. Him and Renee being a thing, that's a never before featured part of the story.
And you were like, no way, she's 18 years old.
And it definitely didn't happen, but he's saying it did. To be extremely clear, Renee and Josh never fooled around like Josh claimed. That would also have been a felony in California. Renee was 18, Josh was 14 at the time, but this whole thing never happened. It's just a lie. And Josh admitted to us freely that he has told lots of lies about what happened to Renee.
I even tried coming out about it in court because I actually came out and said I was lying about certain things.
You testified at one of the proceedings that you made it all up because it's what the cops wanted to hear?
Yeah.
And that all of it was lies?
Yeah. Detective Wells, some other detective, they were trying to take advantage basically of me when I was young. And they're sitting there saying, well, being is that you are present, we can lock you up for the rest of your life, blah, 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 trying to scare me and coerce what I was saying.
Josh told us he'd lied all those years ago because of pressure from detectives. But he swore that he was telling the truth to us now. And the real truth, he said, was that Jake Silva had not been involved in the attack on Renee. Josh's story about seeing an attack on Renee was true, but his claim that Jake was involved had not been.
But I can honestly say that I do not believe Jake Silva should be locked up. I don't.
I mean, the evidence against him was kind of you.
Yeah. Yep. And me being a scared 14-year-old, being under pressure from detectives, I was scared. And I mean, he does not deserve to be in prison. All I can say for Jake is that he could have done something about it. He didn't do anything about it. And he can live with that guilt all his life. But as far as sitting in prison, he doesn't deserve it. He deserves to be just like any other person dealing with his own fucking guilt.
On our drive back, we called Kevin and told him about the version of the story that Josh Burroughs was going with on the day we talked to him. And how Josh told us he had lied when he said he saw Jake Silva assault Renee.
He said he lied about it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is not new information. In court, he also said, I lied about everything. Like, he lies so much and admits to lying and then says that, but this is the truth, and then, no, that was a lie. There's no way to know what is real and what isn't real.
Well, that's just sad, isn't it?
It is. Like, he's the kind of witness who would tell you wwhatever the hell you want to hear if you try and make him say it. So we were being really cautious. We didn't want to, change his story. Yeah.
Right.
What's interesting, though, is we gave no indication that we wanted to say that Jake Silva was innocent. Did we?
No.
Yeah.
He straight up said that. He had no indication why we wanted to talk about this case.
We did not ask Josh about his changing stories. In this interview, our plan had been not to confront Josh in any way. We wanted to hear his story, unchallenged and undirected, and to let him tell us whatever version of the story he wanted to say. At one point, though, we couldn't help it. We ended up pushing back a little. Jake's story is that he was never at the Home Depot.
Well, that's just what they told me. They said they found evidence that he was actually true indeed there. But they could have been lying to me, so.
In an interview that had been packed full of confusing nonsense, this moment stood out to us. I thought he was going to say, well, then Jake's lying.
He didn't say that.
I thought for sure his reaction would be, well, then I know Jake's lying, so why is Jake lying about it unless he did it? But no.
He didn't protest that at all.
If any part of the story was true, he'd have said, Jake can say what he wants, but I know he was there.
Yeah, no, I caught that too. And it happened again, like towards the end of our conversation, where he said, wait, they told me Jake was there. And I'm like, wanted to say, wait, you told us
them that Jake was there.
So which is it?
He was like, so he wasn't there? I'm like, I don't know, buddy. You're the one who said he was.
I know, you're the one who said he was.
There was a lot more we wanted to ask Josh, but now was not the time. We needed to learn more. We needed to go to Manteca and investigate first, before we came back. We made a decision not to confront him today. And I hope it was the right one. But we're banking on the fact that he seemed very agreeable to do a second meeting.
Oh yeah, he will do more meetings, I guarantee.
Look, if you listen to the show, you know that Jacinda and I are fueled by food and cocktails. So it is important to us to have good groceries delivered to our door.
That's why I just subscribe to Butcher Box. And I think you guys should too.
I am super excited because Butcher Box lets you easily find high-quality meat and seafood that you can trust, with the ultimate convenience. Delivered right to your doorstep, free shipping always, with curated, customized box plans.
And it's an incredible value. You get a variety of high-quality cuts at an amazing price, exclusive member deals, plus recipe inspiration, guides, tips, and hacks.
Look, I'm being honest. I have to go to the store. It might not happen. So having good food delivered to us means that we'll actually have decent meals.
Yeah, there's nothing better than coming back from being in the field to open up the freezer.
Oh my God,
and
just
it's
thinking of that.
Right? It's stocked with fresh, high-quality meat. What is better than that?
Yeah, getting back from travel and not having to be like, you know what I gotta do first thing in the morning? Go to the grocery store? Amazing.
Today, Butcher Box is giving our listeners free ground beef for life with your membership, plus an additional $20 off your first order. Use our link, butcherbox.com/proof, and use code PROOF to get free ground beef for life, plus $20 off your first box. That's butcherbox.com/proof and code PROOF.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify POS has everything you need to sell in person. Go to shopify.com/system, all lowercase, to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/system.
No matter how far you run from them, childhood tragedies have a way of catching back up with you. So is true of elite scuba diver Veronica West, who's about to encounter something unexplainable at the bottom of the ocean, something that will draw her back to her home on Sinclair Island, Maine. There, she'll lead a dangerous rescue mission to the bottom of the Bay of Fundy, home of the world's largest tides, and something horrific down in the depths. Listen to Narcosis, the latest horror fiction show on Realm's premier horror channel, Undertow. Narcosis is available now. Search for Undertow or Narcosis wherever podcasts are served.
It was Josh's story about the Home Depot party that sent Jake and Ty to prison for life. But that was not Josh's only story about how Renee had been killed. He's had several other stories about it too. The first time detectives spoke to Josh Burroughs was in June, less than 2 weeks after Renee's body was found. And at that time, he didn't say anything about a Home Depot party. Instead, he told a complicated tale about hearing sex noises from the direction of the Home Depot while he was at the Food for Less grocery store, and how a mysterious stranger had shown him photos of Renee hanging out with her killer on the night she died. The killer, Josh said, was someone known only as Steve Raimundo's uncle, a muscular Hispanic man with a goatee and slick back hair. At that time, Detective Joe Morgan was still lead detective. He did not believe Josh Burroughs' story, but he was extremely confused by it. Morgan investigated the various claims Josh made, but none of it checked out. Steve Raimundo did not have any uncles like the one Josh described, and the people Josh said had been with him when they heard the sex noises all denied that anything like that had ever happened. So Detective Morgan had moved on from Josh Burroughs and his uncorroborated claims. Nearly 3 months later, though, Detective Morgan was kicked off the case. Detectives Sousa and Wells were now in charge, and one of the first things they did was go speak to a teenager named Jesse Howland. That's Jake's friend, who went with him to the hair salon to get his hair dyed, and was also with him at the KFC when he reported Renee missing on Thursday. Jesse had been interviewed in the case before, back when Morgan was still in charge, but at that time, he said he hadn't known anything about how Renee had died. But as Detective Wells explained on the episode of Real Interrogations, when they go back and interview Jesse again, he tells them something that breaks their cold case wide open.
This kid tells us that he knows another kid that told him he was there and watched this murder occur.
Here's Kevin reading from Jesse's interview transcript.
The story Josh told me was the real story, what really happened. He told me that he was there when she got murdered, you know? that when he was out there in that little forest-looking thing, sitting on a log, and they were all talking and stuff, and Renee asking something about, how do you get into some kind of gang? And they said something about, oh, if we all fuck you, you'll get in a gang. And then Josh told me that they all took off and took Renee. They took off in the car, and they went to go buy beers, And when they came back, Renee was gone.
If you're confused by this, don't worry, you're not alone. We have no idea what Jesse is talking about. And as far as we can tell, detectives never tried to figure it out either. Based on what Jesse tells them, though, Susan and Wells go to interrogate Josh Burroughs the very next day. Only they make a quick detour first. Before speaking to Josh, they go talk to another witness, 21-year-old Chris Williams. And as Jake Silva explains, this interview changes the course of his life forever.
Chris Williams is the one that made up the story about the so-called gang rape party at Home Depot. He was the one that originally came up with that.
Who is Chris Williams?
I remember him, but he was like a little off, like he was a little slow. I don't want to be disrespectful towards him or whatever, but he was just off.
But you didn't know that he also said he was at the Home Depot?
No, not till Joey told me about it, that she found the paperwork about Chris Williams.
We don't have the audio from it, but we have a transcript of the interview. And in it, Chris Williams tells Detective Susan Wells how he and Josh decided to check out the Home Depot one night because they had a hunch that people were partying out there. They were right. A lot of people were there, Chris Williams tells them. Even 5 or 6 of Renee's close girlfriends from Antigua High School were there. Which makes sense because everyone was there at the Home Depot to celebrate Renee being pregnant. But then the party turns bad. Renee is raped by Jake Silva, and then by Jake Silva's uncle Sam, and then by a couple of Jake's friends. Renee's own uncle is also at the party and involved in raping her somehow. Chris doesn't know the uncle's name, but he describes him as big and husky. Throughout the rapes, Renee continuously screams out, "I hate it," and "I'm pregnant," but no one steps in to try and stop the assault.
The reason you've not heard much on this podcast about Chris Williams before now is because after this interview, he plays no further role in this case. Despite the fact he claims to have witnessed Renee's rape and murder, he is not a witness at trial. The police report notes that Chris Williams is, quote, mentally challenged. And it's apparent from his transcripts that he has significant cognitive impairments. Chris Williams also had no idea who most of the people he's talking about even were. The detectives showed him photos of Renee and Ty Lopes, but he was unable to identify either one. Later on, a defense investigator also attempted to interview Chris Williams. Here's what the defense investigator's report says.
I asked Christopher to describe Ty Lopes to me. He then told me that Ty was a skateboarder who was about 20 years old, medium height, and had long blonde hair. The Ty Lopes charged in this matter is balding, heavy-set, and obviously in his mid-30s.
We were not able to speak to Chris Williams ourselves. According to his mother, he now lives in a care facility and does not have the capacity to answer questions about the case. But after Chris Williams told the detectives this story about the Home Depot party, they immediately picked up Josh Burroughs and took him to the station to be interrogated.
Okay, this is real important here, Josh. We know you were at Home Depot, and that's because someone else has talked. We're not going to tell you who, but people are starting to talk. And the one thing in common in a lot of what those people said is that you were there. Now we know that. Josh?
Be involved is, man. Well, it's not just you who are involved. There's a ton of people. You know you're not alone here at all.
The detectives never tell Josh Burroughs who it was that placed him at the Home Depot in the first place.
Okay, do you know a guy named Chris Williams? An older guy?
Yeah. We were told he was there too.
Could he have been there?
I doubt it, man, because nobody really...
Could he have been there earlier and then left?
I doubt it, but that's just my opinion.
Josh's story about the Home Depot party more or less tracks with what Chris Williams told detectives. But there are some significant changes in Josh's version of events. For instance, according to Chris Williams, Renee was raped by either her own uncle or by Jake's uncle Sam, or maybe by both. But Josh tells them it was Ty Lopes, the uncle of Robbie Mendoza, who helped Jake rape Renee. And unlike Chris Williams, who was unable to identify Renee when shown a photo of her, Josh Burroughs is able to identify her by name. Though that's not surprising, given that Renee's photo has been all over the news for months by then. And anyway, Josh knew Renee even before the Home Depot party. As he explained to Susan Wells, he'd met her once at Fuji's place.
She would make us some biscuits, kind of like, with butter on it. Well, that's kind of nice of a girl to do that.
I didn't have any way of making biscuits in my room. I don't know what the hell he's talking about.
Fuji told us what Josh described never happened.
Would you and your friends ever hang out in your parents?
No, I wouldn't let them in the front.
Yeah, this story about the biscuits comes up a lot from Burroughs. It's his explanation for how he knows Renee. She made him biscuits and she was nice.
I don't know where that came from.
Josh repeats the story about Renee making him biscuits in almost every interrogation and every time he testified. But why make up a story about knowing Renee because she made him biscuits once? It was when we talked to Josh Burroughs for the first time that suddenly this all began to make sense. When Josh started explaining to us why it would have been physically impossible for him to have murdered Renee.
I'm like, how can a 14-year-old small child try to take down a 17-year-old? Because she was bigger than me. Couldn't have taken her down. Hell no. She probably would have whooped my ass.
That's when I realized Josh did not know who Renee Ramos was. He had not met her. Less than 2 weeks after Renee was found, Josh was arrested for stealing a car. And according to his arrest paperwork, at that time he was 5 inches taller and 50 pounds heavier than Renee had been. If Josh had really met her, he'd never have believed that she could be bigger than he was. That's why I think Josh came up with the story about Renee and the biscuits. It was a way to explain how he knew her when they'd never actually met. It's not just Josh Burroughs' story about knowing Renee that's questionable, though. The more we investigated, the more we began to realize that Josh's claims to have known the other people in this case were questionable as well. Josh had known Jake Silva. He had hung around Jake's group of friends sometimes. But as for the other co-defendants, well, it's not so clear that Josh actually knew them. Take, for instance, Ray Goins. Here's what Josh told Jacinda and me about him. Remind me, did you know Ray Goins, or did you?
Yes.
Why is he hanging out with you guys?
Well, his cousin is younger. I forget his cousin's name, but we used to hang out and would smoke with his cousin.
Yeah, no. Ray does not have a cousin in Manteca. And Josh never hung out with any of Ray's family. Whoever Josh is thinking of, it's not Ray Goins. Actually, though, it should have been apparent from the very beginning that Josh didn't have a clue who Ray was. Here's what happened when Susan Wells showed Josh a photo of Ray during his very first interrogation with him.
How about this guy here? You know this guy? Was he there that night?
His nickname's Shaggy.
Shaggy? Was he there that night?
He already left, though.
Yeah? Does the name Ray ring a bell to you?
And his nickname's Shaggy.
No one we've talked to who knew Ray could recall him ever using the nickname Shaggy. As far as we can tell, Josh may have made this name up on the spot to cover for the fact he didn't know Ray's actual name. Luckily, the detectives are able to fill him in on it.
Yeah, this Shaggy guy that we were talking about that we know is Ray.
He used to work in a porno video kind of type home.
Well, I don't know that.
As far as we're aware, Ray has never worked in a porno video either. We have no idea who Josh was talking about, but it's not Ray Gones. So how did Ray ever become part of this story?
And see, Ray Gomes had nothing to do with it. Somebody brought up Ray Gomes and they kept pressuring me into mentioning Ray Gomes. Well, was Ray Gomes there? Ray Gomes?
So the police wanted you to say Ray Goins was there?
Mm-hmm.
That brings us to the final defendant in this case, Ty Lopes. Did Josh Burroughs know him? When he was interrogated by detectives, Josh claimed he did, though his responses weren't entirely convincing.
Do you know Ty's last name?
Lopes, something like that, Lopes.
Is he related to anyone?
Robert Mendoza.
How's he related to him?
I don't know.
Based on something that happened in Josh Burroughs' first interrogation, it seems likely that Josh had not actually known Ty Lopes by name. Detective Susan and Wells showed Josh a photo of Renee's uncle, likely because Chris Williams had claimed he was one of the people involved in raping Renee. But listen to Josh's response.
We want to show you a couple photos here, Josh, see if you know any of these people, okay? Do you know that person at all?
I look like Ty, but I don't know him.
Okay, that's fine. If you don't know him, you don't have to say anything.
Renee's uncle and Ty Lopes do not look alike. If Josh thought Renee's uncle was similar to Ty, then it's hard to see how he could have known who this Ty Slopes guy was. But Susan and Wells were careful not to make this mistake twice. They quickly show Josh a photo of Ty Lopes and make sure that he knows who it is a photo of before he responds.
Best friend, you have a picture of Ty? You know who that is? That's Ty?
Was he the one that was there?
He was standing right by her.
Before this interview with the detectives, we don't think Josh Burroughs knew Ty Lopes by name. But it turns out Josh had seen Ty Lopes before, because Ty's daughter, Mandy, had been friends with Josh Burroughs.
We'd all used to be playing on the street, and my dad would come and get me, and he'd seen him and stuff like that.
When he gave his statement, I'm guessing he didn't realize that this guy he's talking about is his friend's dad.
He probably didn't know at first and then probably put it together.
So Josh would have known Ty Lopes by sight. He had no reason to know him by name, but he should have recognized him as his friend's father. When Mandy told us that she and Josh Burroughs had actually been friends before all this, we'd been surprised. That's not mentioned in the files anywhere. But it makes sense. They were about the same age and lived near each other. And even after her father was arrested for murder based on what Josh Burroughs had said, Mandy and Josh continued to be friends. Or at least Mandy continued to act like she was Josh's friend.
I did hang out with Josh a lot, and I just tried to act like normal. And my dad was always like, see if he says something. That's why I would always hang out with Josh after that. So I wanted to see if he would say something.
Did he?
No.
There was only one time Mandy remembers when she'd been with Josh and the topic of Renee's case came up. It happened right after her dad was convicted.
Once my dad got convicted and I was out and we pulled up to Josh's house and a girl ran out and she said, "Oh, Josh, your case won. You're gonna get the reward." And they were just kind of like, shh.
Mandy doesn't know anything more about what the girl had been talking about. Just this comment about how Josh was going to get the reward money now that Mandy's dad had been convicted. The other teenagers had remembered Mandy was standing right there and stopped talking about it.
Even for those who had no doubts about Jake's and Ty's guilt, Josh Burroughs' role in this case has always been something of a mystery.
There was a witness that testified in the trial. His name's Josh Burroughs, And I believe that he was there. He tried to change his story many times.
When we talked to Renee's mother, Donna, she told us what she recalled about Josh from the time she saw him in court.
I just remember he used to just look at me like his eyes were just so sad. I wanted to talk to him, but I couldn't.
What did you want to say to him?
Why didn't you come forward, or why didn't you tell them if he was there, if it was a story, or what? I just still don't understand.
Getting this case for nearly a year, though, Jacinda and I thought we were finally beginning to understand what had happened. It was time for us to go back and speak to Josh Burroughs once again. Usually I have a game plan going into interviews.
You have no game plan?
How do you prepare for this?
I was kind of playing it out in my head last night when I couldn't sleep.
That's the thing, though. You cannot plan this one out because there's no way to predict what he's going to say. He could tell us literally anything. Let's take bets. What story are we going to hear this time?
I think he's going to come clean, actually.
Maybe. I mean, that's the thing. Like, nothing would surprise me.
What if he confesses?
That wouldn't surprise me.
It wouldn't surprise me either.
We decided to begin just by showing Josh the videos from his interrogations and hearing what adult Josh thinks about the things 14-year-old Josh said.
Hey, Josh. You need anything before we get started here?
Is that me?
That's you.
I don't remember that hat.
I don't think there's any boys that are 14, 15 years old that don't have a few pimples. I know. I had a few pimples that age, too. It sucked. I mean, I wash my face and think a lot. You tried that sea breeze stuff?
Oh, I remember that. I was high as hell. I was high as hell. Man, I was like smoking all day that day.
We know you're on house arrest, but you're not under arrest with us, right? Okay.
Oh yeah, I was on house arrest. And then they're dragging me out of the house, and the people that put me on house arrest were okay with it. So I was just like, that's kind of odd.
Oh, so you had to get permission, obviously, but they'd arranged in advance to get permission.
Yeah. So like I was putting two to two together, like something ain't jiving right, you know.
It was bigger than they were telling you.
Yeah, because like you can tell, like I was nervous.
Remember what I told you earlier? People who hide things become suspects?
Ty and Jake Silva strangled her with their own bra strap and then screwed her and dumped her.
How do you know that?
Soon I become a suspect.
As soon as they mention you're going to be a suspect. Yeah.
Yeah, because like right then and there, I'm scared. I'm trying to like figure out a way around it. Get you know, I didn't kill the girl. Why are you looking at me? They threatened jail time. You know, spending the rest of my life in jail, like them, like the murder, you know, like the person that actually killed her. I'm like, no, not me. I'm 14 years old.
And they're telling you the same thing they're telling Jake, which is other people have already told us.
No, there was a lot of people talking and saying that they knew what happened, but really didn't know what happened. And then, you know, a couple of them actually tried to pin it on me, and I'm like, why? You know, I've never did anything to these people. Why were they gonna, you know?
Yeah, Josh. Having someone who has no idea what really happened trying to pin a murder on you sounds rough. I bet Jake Silva and Ty Lopes would know exactly how you feel.
You said that they kept pressuring. What was the pressure?
And basically like, oh, we know this. We know this person was here. We know this transpired. We know this happened, blah, 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 blah.
So they would tell you, this happened, to get you to say, yes, that happened.
Pretty much.
Josh Burroughs claimed he'd been coerced into telling the story about the party at Home Depot. And yet, like every time before, in every police interrogation, defense interview, and trial testimony, he also continued to insist there really had been a party in the Home Depot warehouse across from the Best Western Hotel.
So here's the deal, Josh. If you don't tell us
here's the truth. There was a party at Home Depot. You know, there was a lot of people there too. and Renee being one of them. But as far as Jake being there, I didn't see him there.
Well, that's the question. Was there really a party?
There really was a party.
Who was there, though?
I mean, I don't know everybody in Manteca.
But who's one person that was there?
I know Fuji was there. I know Stan was there. And a few other people from Grim Crew. The one is dead. The other one's dead, too. But everybody was there. The few people that I told you about, they were there.
Stan couldn't have been there. Stan actually he's the one person in the case has an alibi. Because he was with the family in Lake Arizona. So we actually know Stan couldn't have been there.
I guess I'm wrong. I'm trying to remember this as best I can, but what I do know is that she was there. I seen things get out of hand, but Jake wasn't there. Not that I seen.
And you know this because you were there, or because you were told it happened?
No, I was there because at first it was the Best Western. My mom can even tell you. Picked my ass up that night, whooped my ass all the way back home, and then I snuck out that night, and I went to another one.
You snuck out and went back to the Home Depot party, what you're saying?
This story about the two parties has been something Josh Burroughs has been claiming from the very first time he spoke to Detective Souza and Wells. He had been partying in a hotel room at the Best Western, and then, later on that night, he'd ended up at a second party, at a warehouse across the street where the Home Depot was being built. Josh also told Souza and Wells the same thing he told us, about what happened at the end of the night, that his mom had seen him walking along the side of the road drunk, so she'd pulled over and picked him up in her little Volkswagen Beetle and driven him home. And Josh says that this night his mom picked him up in the Beetle is the night he partied at the warehouse.
Hell, my mom was beating my ass up and down the road when she found I snuck out.
Yeah, but she picked you up in the Beetle.
Yeah.
She picked you up in the Beetle that night. But she didn't own the Beetle when the party at Home Depot supposedly happened.
No, she did own the Beetle.
No, that was sold in April. We know Renee was last seen on Memorial Day, May 29th. By the time that comes around, the Beetle's been gone for a month and a bit.
No, because I think the timeline's a little wrong, because she did come pick me up in the Beetle that very evening.
And she told the police, and they had paper to prove it. The Beetle had been sold. By the time this happens, the Beetle's gone.
Josh has always said that on the night of the parties at the Best Western and Home Depot, his mom picked him up in the Beetle, a car she sold in April. And we think Josh is telling the truth about this, at least as far as the Best Western party is concerned.
So they did look into the Best Western party, and they could confirm that happened because it seems like y'all did a lot of graffiti in the hotel room. Detectives Souza and Wells told Josh in recorded interviews that they had checked into it and had confirmed that the Best Western party happened in April, which is a problem for the detectives, because Josh told them the same thing he was telling us now, that the Best Western party and the Home Depot party were on the same night. That would mean the Home Depot party happened in April too, weeks before Renee's disappearance. But the problem with Josh's story about the Home Depot party isn't just a question of timing. The workers at the Home Depot were all certain that there'd never been evidence of kids partying there at any time. I mean, part of me just doesn't believe that a bunch of teenagers could clean up that well from a party. To not leave a single can behind, not leave a single trace.
That place was trashed.
We told Josh, no, the place had not been trashed. If this party happened, if there was a party there should be evidence of it. There should be something.
There should be a beer can. There should be
a person who would tell us they were at the party and left early. Like, there's no reason why 40 kids, all of them, would continue to be like, what?
This was something that everybody learned from. When you trash a room like that, and you bring attention, cops get called.
It was around this time that we realized any thoughts we'd had of confronting Josh Burroughs were kind of pointless. Josh contains too many multitudes for that. I gave it one last try, though. Okay, I told him. If the party was real, how come there's no evidence of it on the one security camera we know the police did pull? The one from the Food for Less where he originally claimed he'd heard sex noises. Look, the freaking Food for Less. Like, one of those kids would have gone past the Food for Less and to be on film. Why is...
Yeah, no one's on security
Why
footage.
is there no footage from Food for Less supporting a party? If there really were 40 teenagers coming through, at least one of them would go by Food for Less, right? I mean, you even say you went by Food for Less.
I mean, I could have. Like I
How
said,
could
I
not
was.
one kid go by Food for Less? Like, no kids show up at night at the right times to support a party. That's the logical
I think
place.
underage kids are like not allowed to be out after a certain point in Manteca, I thought.
Anytime we pointed out a flaw in what Josh was telling us, he'd quickly adapt. He'd come up with a new explanation, using whatever we told him to fix his story, or try to fix it, and incorporate the facts that we were giving him into a new version of what he was saying. We told Josh that it seemed like that's what happened when he talked to detectives, too.
It sounds like they maybe were feeding you information.
A lot of it was. Like, I can't tell you exactly who landed the first blow, or not the first, but the last blow that killed Renee. I can't tell you who actually, because at that point I got my ass whooped. And that's not something I'm willing to admit too lightly.
You mentioned the blow that killed Renee. You think she was beaten to death?
Yeah.
Why do you think that?
Well, I mean, you can just tell by the crime scene photos that she was beaten to death. I already knew what happened.
Josh told us he knew Renee had been beaten to death from the crime scene photos he'd somehow seen. But then Josh quickly added, "Of course I knew she'd been beaten to death even before I saw the photos." As Susan and I reflected later, after the interview was over, it was claims like this that made Josh such a frustrating witness to interview.
He's like, oh, I don't know who gave the last blow that killed her. I'm like, she wasn't beaten to death, Josh. What are you talking about?
He's like, you could see the bruises on her.
I'm like,
no.
We would try to summarize the story Josh told us in our interviews, but we can't. There was no single story, just like what happened when he spoke to Detective Susan Wells. What Josh told us was that he was pistol whipped into unconsciousness, and he never actually saw how Renee was killed. But he also told us he watched as she was strangled to death with her own panties. Only she hadn't been strangled, she'd been beaten to death by multiple assailants. This party happened in May or June, but at the end of the night, his mom picked him up in a Volkswagen Beetle she had sold in April. And according to him, everything he told the detectives back in 2000 had been a lie he'd been coerced into saying. But also, some of what he said was actually true. He's just not sure which parts. After talking to Josh Burroughs, the only thing we felt certain of was this. Josh can't tell us what happened to Renee because he doesn't know. Hey everyone, before we continue with this episode, I want to tell you about another podcast. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to watch your house burn down, or be attacked by an alligator, or learn that your spouse hired someone to kill you? If you're dying to know, then What Was That Like is the podcast for you. What Was That Like is filled with real stories about the most surreal experiences of people's lives. On the show, host Scott Johnson dives deep with his guests into the unbelievable situations they found themselves in, like animal attacks, plane crashes, winning the Price is Right, and more. The show brings you tons of completely surreal, completely true stories, all told through the lens of the person who actually experienced it.
Check out some of these episodes about wild and gripping stories to gain some insight on what it was like to, say, be a professional bridesmaid or lose a leg in a shark attack.
Susan, I think you'd be a really good professional bridesmaid.
And you'd be really good at losing a leg in a shark attack.
Oh, gee, thanks.
So if you want to hear some disturbing and inspiring firsthand stories, you need to check out What Was That Like? Every story is thoroughly researched and fact-checked, so you know even the most bizarre tales are someone's reality. Listen to What Was That Like on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Settle in for an evening of mystery, mayhem, and exploration of the dark side of humanity. I'm Dr. Shiloh, a former cop.
And I'm Dr. Scott, a former Hollywood casting director. Now we're both forensic psychologists working in Southern California.
Are you fascinated by the twisted minds that commit criminal acts? Do you ever wonder, how could they do that?
In each episode of our podcast, LA Not So Confidential, we dissect the nexus where true crime, forensic psychology, and entertainment meet.
Dee Blanchard was exaggerating her daughter's medical condition for financial gain.
We serve up fascinating cases viewed through the lens of human behavior.
Why is your brother afraid of you?
Because I hurt him so much.
Delivered with our signature gallows humor while examining the actual diagnoses and dishing on the media portrayal.
The kids are my life.
Subscribe to LA Not So Confidential anywhere you go for podcasts.
Come and join us for LA
Not So
Confidential. Trust us, we're doctors.
When you listen to Nobody Listens to Paula Poundstone, the comedy podcast, you get a belly full of laughs and a head full of real information. Our gallimaufry of expert guests answer questions on stuff adults need to know. I have mold in my dwelling. What do I do? What's gerrymandering? What happens chemically when I fall in love? How do I handle a parent-teacher conference? What are microbes? Listen to Nobody Listens to Paula Poundstone. Solve problems, get laughs.
It was towards the end of our interview with Josh that we decided to show him some of Jake Silva's interrogation tapes. It was then, for the first time, that Josh seemed visibly shaken.
We're not bluffing here. We know
Neither
for a fact
am I.
you're there.
How do you know for a fact I was there?
I just told you.
Because a lot of people were there.
Because the people who were at the party said you were.
That don't mean nothing.
It does mean...
a bunch of...
What do you think about seeing that?
No, I mean, I feel like shit. Because they were sitting there coaching me and they're fucking even bringing him up. See, I don't even understand why they kept coaching me to fucking say his name. What proof did they even have?
You.
Huh.
Yeah, you were the evidence.
But see, when I recanted, I thought that would be the end of it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
That took a lot of balls to recant.
Oh yeah, I did, because it was wrong. You can't send nobody to fucking prison for the rest of their life. And, you know, how could it be solely off of my statement, okay? Whatever the cops coached me into saying.
Do you recall when you told the cops that, like, to bury the evidence of the party, you got in a car and did donuts to dig a hole?
I don't remember saying that. I do not remember saying that.
Do you think that's even possible?
Probably not.
Finally, Josh told us he needed to go home. We wrapped things up and drove him back, but on the way there, we kept the recorder rolling. And Susan told him what she thought had happened when he was first interrogated.
I think when you first talked to the police, you did not believe you were telling them about Renee's death. The way you phrased things, I don't think you were telling the police about a party where Renee died.
Exactly.
You're just talking about a party.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it is fair. I mean, they kept bringing up about some party, and I was just like, come on, man. The only party that I know is a couple parties I went to that night, and I thought I was in trouble.
Just before we pulled over to drop Josh off at his home, he told us one last thing. Maybe, he said, the second party, the one after the Best Western, hadn't been at the Home Depot at all. Maybe it had been somewhere nearby.
Like I said, it was the same vicinity. The place that I did go in that same vicinity was definitely dark. I'm trying to figure out exactly.
Another warehouse? Oh my god, where am I?
Oh, pretty good. Second. As soon as I hop out, I gotta run.
See, thank you so much.
Bye. All right, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
We had thought Josh's parting words to us were just another story. Now he claims that he really did go to a party at a warehouse, only it wasn't the Home Depot, it was some totally different warehouse in that same area. Sure, Josh. Whatever, Josh.
The first time we met him, I walked away feeling kind of angry.
Like, last time was Josh being glib and making up stories off the cuff. Tonight, I mean, there's still some of that, but like...
I saw a broken 14-year-old tonight who feels remorse that Jake and Ty got locked up. He seemed a little broken. Susan and I told Kevin how our second interview with Josh had gone.
It was just sad. Like, usually we go out and talk to people and there's like a sense of accomplishment and a sense of like moving the ball forward. This one was just sad.
I'm not sure what we were hoping to get from it. I think I was hoping like a full, I made everything up, I made the party up, I made it all up.
He's not capable of that. We showed him Jake's interrogation clips. He seemed pretty troubled by that. Like, it's not going to come across in the audio, but his like reaction seeing Jake was, it seemed like it was a gut punch for him.
I mean, it's sinking in now that the only reason he's been rotting away is because of what he said. Whether he intended for that to happen or not, that's the result.
He intended for Josh to not go to prison. He thought they already had evidence proving Jake was there, so why not just tell him that Jake was there?
Yeah.
Win-win-win.
Yeah, what's the harm in telling them what they need to hear?
If he's as impulsive of a liar as everyone says, I mean, what goes on in his brain, right? Like, what does he keep track of as truth or lies? I mean, at a certain point, your brain must not be able to keep up with it all.
The thing about him is he doesn't even seem to try to keep up with it all. Like, he's not trying to keep a bunch of elaborate lies still spinning. He just throws them out there and forgets them. Is it the things you say at one point have no consequences on the next moment? Except now he's realizing that the things he said at that one moment had serious consequences for others that carry on through today.
Did he express or even did you get a glimpse of any remorse for any of that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you could see the look in his eyes. There was one point we were playing the interrogations for him, and he didn't say anything, but he just looked at me like wide-eyed.
When we spoke to Josh, I was reminded of what Renee's mother, Donna, told us about what she remembered about Josh. And I thought I knew now what she'd been describing.
I just remember the look. He used to just look at me and his eyes were just so sad.
When we confronted Josh with what the results of his stories had been, he had looked as if he felt the weight of it. He looked like someone confronting the intense destruction they've caused in the lives of others. Now, did Josh actually feel anything like that? Or was it all just an act? With Josh, who can possibly say? He could have been playing us, and maybe he was. But for what it's worth, the sadness on his face seemed real. I believed he was feeling regret or something like it. But I also believe that if we were to go back to Josh tomorrow and talk to him again, he would spin out a totally new story, one that's never been heard before, while insisting that this story, this time, really is the truth.
Josh did not admit he'd made up the story about the Home Depot party, but legally it wouldn't have changed anything even if he had.
Susan, what happens if, has this guy ever sort of formally recanted his story?
He formally recanted it under oath before trial, and it didn't matter, so it's not going to matter after the fact. The one thing he could give an answer on, that I was hopeful he might be able to, he didn't, and that was the reward. He denied being told he'd get a reward and double denied ever getting it.
But then he's like, wait a minute, maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know.
This whole reward thing, Jesus Christ.
That's the one part that would be legally relevant, if he did get the money and that was not disclosed.
Here's what Josh told us when we asked him about that.
The $12,000, the reward?
I never got no reward.
But did they tell you? Did they make you think you were going to get it?
No. I never heard, actually, I don't know.
There was talk of it going to like a trust fund 'cause you were 14.
Well, I never got no $12,000, no.
But did they ever tell you you'd get it?
Not that I remember. I could be wrong. definitely could be wrong.
But you never got it?
I never got no 12.
Did your parents get it? Or your stepdad or your mom?
I doubt it. There ain't no way, because at that time when the case was closed, I was with my dad.
Josh 100% knew about the reward back then. He talked about it all the time in the transcripts. Josh denies he ever did get the reward, but I still wonder. Because from what we could tell from transcripts, back in 2000, Josh Burroughs believed any reward money would be put in a trust managed by his mom and stepdad. And Josh was right. Before the trials were over, he'd left California. He wasn't living with his mom and stepdad. So if they did get the reward, maybe Josh didn't even know about it.
I mean, maybe they didn't pay them. It's not uncommon for these stupid Crime Stopper groups to do that. They get people to come forward with the promise of a reward and just never pay it out. I mean, it's the whole point. It's anonymous. Like, who's going to complain? Because no one can complain.
But even if there was an understanding that they were going to get paid, even if they never did, that would still be great money.
Yeah, it would be. It'd be good to know, but he did not confirm that. Didn't fully deny it, but didn't confirm it.
We were so used to Josh's lies and so ready to dismiss what he said that we hadn't realized at the time there was something Josh Burroughs tried to tell us in his interview that may have been the truth. His parting words to us had been him describing how he really had gone to a party somewhere in the vicinity of the Home Depot, but he wasn't sure where. Now he's like, maybe it was a party in a dark place near the vicinity of Home Depot.
Come on, buddy.
East Girard Street, then turn left onto
Yes,
South
he is
Cameron
lying
Street.
to us. We hadn't believed Josh. We thought it was just another Josh story. But months later, I happened to talk to a couple people in Manteca about something I've been looking into. These witnesses were the same age group as Jake and his friends, but a different social group. And they'd made a sort of throwaway comment. Hey, you know, there really was a warehouse near the Home Depot where we'd gone to skateboard and party, they said. They showed me on a map where this warehouse was. It turns out it's in the same development area as the Home Depot, but on the very far end of it, nearly 3/4 of a mile away. It was a well-known party spot for our friends, the witnesses told me. Kids really did go there to skate and party, but outside of it, never on the inside. We just hung out in the street by the loading dock area. That's when I realized that this sounds exactly like the party that Josh Burroughs described in his very first interview.
Kind of on a road.
There was a road back in here?
Yeah, but I think it was.
So you guys weren't inside Home Depot?
Hell no.
No? No?
There really was a warehouse where kids were partying and skating sometimes. Josh definitely could have been there too at some point. And here's what I now think may have happened. In April of 2000, Josh partied at a warehouse in the new development area across the street from Best Western. Not at the Home Depot, but at a different warehouse at the very southern end of the construction area. Josh did not know what company owned the warehouse he'd been at. And why would he? He was 14 years old. He wouldn't care what the commercial purpose was of whatever random warehouse they were hanging out at. Then, after Renee's murder, the detectives tracked Josh down. They told him, Josh, we know you were partying over there at the warehouse, at the Home Depot where Renee was killed. We have proof you were there, now tell us what happened. Josh could have assumed that the warehouse he'd partied at and the warehouse where Renee was found at were one and the same. After all, that's what detectives were telling him. How was Josh supposed to realize that the warehouse the detectives were talking about was completely different from the one he'd been at? In our first interview with Josh, he actually told us that something like this is what happened. That the detectives had confronted him with proof that he'd been at the party. And he'd believed them because he really had been at a warehouse party.
So then the detectives come to my house. And they're also talking about how they have my handprints down in the dust. They found some of my handprints, fingerprints over there on the site.
At the Home Depot.
At the Home Depot. I thought because being as I was there that there was no way around it that I'm going to have to say something. Because my handprints were indeed there at the Home Depot. I don't know.
Your prints weren't there.
Okay, they lied to me then.
Yeah.
That's what they were telling me. They said that we found your pants there and I'm like, fuck. So.
Yeah. They didn't have any print evidence.
See, that just pisses me off.
So you thought they found prints there?
That's what they were telling me. That's the reason why I spilled it.
We hadn't believed Josh, not at the time. There was no Home Depot party, so Josh would have known that his fingerprints couldn't have been found there. He had to have known the detectives were lying to him when they said they found his fingerprints there. Except, maybe Josh hadn't known they were lying. If he really did party outside of this other warehouse, the ones where kids skated at, then Josh really could have believed his prints were found there. Josh didn't see anyone get murdered at the warehouse party he really did go to, but maybe he assumed that he'd left before that happened? Only when Josh tried to explain to detectives that he hadn't seen a murder, they told him, "You're lying, and people who lie to us are suspects." Maybe that's when Josh decided, well, fuck it. If they won't believe the truth, that I was there at the warehouse party but I didn't see a murder, then I'll go ahead and tell them I did see the murder happen so they won't think I'm a suspect. If this is what happened, then at some point Josh Burroughs must have realized that the party he'd been at was not in fact the Home Depot. At some point he must have figured this out. But by then, it would have been too late. He'd already given the detectives the statement they wanted. There was no going back for anyone. After talking to Josh, Jacinda and I began to realize how difficult the next phase of our investigation would be. Because in this case, proving that the state's case was wrong turned out to be super easy. The only evidence the state had was Josh's story about the Home Depot party, and none of that was true. It's not worth wasting any more time on. But where did that leave our investigation? That's the thing, though. This case, to solve it, it's not like you can say, oh, look, the star witness is lying. Because, yeah, everyone knows the star witness is lying. They didn't give a shit before.
Maybe it's not a case that has to be solved. I mean, Jake has appeals left.
But, like, in terms of, like, what are we trying to prove here?
Jake didn't do it. Or Ty.
But then we get back to the fact that, like, the only thing that says they did really is Josh Burroughs.
All right, so over. Season two is done.
All right, case closed. Good work, Jacinda.
Great job. Another one in the can.
On to season 3.
If anyone has cases they want to send.
But seriously, though, like, what, like...
I mean, no, I get what you're saying. Like,
there is no evidence that Jake Silva or Ty Lopes killed Renee. The state's entire case was based on lies told by a scared and complicated 14-year-old kid. And in our investigation, we've never found anything that would suggest that either Jake or Ty could be guilty of killing Renee in some other way. Jacinda and I realized if we wanted to have any hope of making a difference in this case, we couldn't simply prove that Jake and Ty didn't kill Renee. We had to try and find out who did.
Next week on Proof.
So who is this that said she was killed at the sister's house?
Eric Greer.
He's the one who recorded the video.
And then ended up hit by a car.
Yeah.
You actually saw the backpack?
Yes, I did. And I seen the backpack and the shoes in the closet at that house.
I know Eric very well. I would bet both my arms and legs right now that he had nothing to do with anything like this.
Renee's death?
No way. No way. Like
do you think he could have known anything, though?
Possibly could have known something.
You've been listening to Proof, a podcast by Red Marble Media in association with Glassbox Media. We'll be back next week with episode 13. Send us your questions and comments at proofcrimepod@gmail.com. We'll respond during our bonus episodes, Proof Sidebar, on Thursdays. Kevin Fitzpatrick is our executive producer. Our webmaster is Clayton Brawley. And our theme music is by Ramiro Marquez. Audio production for this episode is by Michael Ulatowski and Steve Rentos. Our archivist is Amory Davis. Our social media manager is Skylar Park. And thank you to our sponsors who make this podcast possible. Check out the show notes for special sponsor deals. And follow us everywhere with the handle @ProofCrimePod and on our website, proofcrimepod.com.
And lastly, a note to our listeners. If you have any information related to this case, we'd love to speak to you, no matter how small a detail it may seem. It just might be more important than you realize. You can reach us by email or leave us a voicemail at 929-267-3172.
That's all for this week. Thanks so much for listening.
I have diabetes. I'm at risk for pneumococcal pneumonia.
I have asthma. I'm at risk too.
If you're 19 or older with chronic conditions like asthma, diabetes, COPD, or heart disease, or are 65 or older, you are at increased risk for pneumococcal pneumonia. Ask your doctor or pharmacist about Prevnar 20, pneumococcal 20-valent conjugate vaccine, a Pfizer vaccine that can help protect you against pneumococcal pneumonia in just one dose. Even if you've already been vaccinated with other pneumonia vaccines, Prevnar 20 may help provide added protection. Prevnar 20 is approved for adults to help prevent infections from 20 strains of the bacteria that cause pneumococcal pneumonia. Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you've had a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine or its ingredients. Adults with weakened immune systems may have a lower response to the vaccine. Side effects include pain and swelling at the injection site, fatigue, headache, muscle, and joint pain. For full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138 or visit Prevnar20.com.